What's good, y'all? It's Chenoa from NYC, and today we're going to talk about Behind Her Eyes, a limited series on Netflix. It hit Netflix, I think, February 17th, and it took people by storm. I just finished this series, and it's fresh on my mind, so let's get into it.
Well, this does made New York City. New York City!
Streets of New York to Hollywood.
My hood, man. Like, I get love from my hood.
The Bronx is still like very gritty.
She's from New York. What's up?
So I binged this show in like 2 to 3 days. It took me no time at all. It was actually so heavy that I had a dream about it. I don't know, there's just something about these mystery or thriller like series based in the UK, like it just does something to me. I don't know why. For example, last year I was absolutely captivated by Harlan Coben's mystery miniseries. He has one called The Stranger and Safe. Both of those had me up late, like wanting to know, like, are there gonna be more? That's all I need. For the first time in a long time, I actually watched this show without spoiling it for myself. And I'm really hyped about that because usually I will Wikipedia something to see who's the cast, and then I'll like scroll down to the plot and like find out everything. So I was genuinely surprised by the ending. So yes, our main character is our girl Louise. She is a hard-working single mother. She works as an assistant at a local psychiatrist's office. And one night she goes out on the town, something that she never really does, and she has a chance encounter with a man named David, who is a tall glass of water, if I do say so myself. I was like, hold on, UK, United Kingdom, okay, let's go. So anyway, they're at the bar, they have a good little night. You know, things don't go too far, but it's like, oh, this is cute. So the next day, Louise goes to work and she realizes that the new psychiatrist that the office was expecting is David, the man from the bar, the tall glass of water. So, you know, things are a bit awkward from the beginning. Mind you, David's married. We didn't know that. But David's married, but still they still have feelings for each other and they keep up with their little affair. So David, as well as his wife Adele, are new to town. Adele is pretty much kept cooped up in the crib and she seems very controlled by David. So from the jump, I was not feeling that. Like, yeah, he fine, but he kind of weird, and that's making me concerned for Louise because that's my girl. David wants to know every single move that Adele is making. Some backstory about Adele: she was actually orphaned as a young adult after a fire killed her parents in their estate. David rescued her from that fire when they were younger, and they've been together ever since, even during her stay at a mental institution following the fire. So some way, somehow, Louise finds herself in the middle of David and Adele's relationship. She keeps messing around with David, and then she becomes Adele's one and only friend because Adele knows nobody else. So, you know, first 2 episodes, the energy is weird to me. Because I know it's a mystery, because I know there's plot twists coming somewhere, I'm thinking of the most strangest, like, possibilities. So I'm like, are Adele and the doctor siblings? Especially because, you know, the background with her parents, maybe he was another sibling that we just didn't know about. Louise gets a little peek into a snappy side of David. Around episode 2, he kind of gets snappy with her because of some stresses that he's dealing with at home with Adele. And if I were Louise, I would have just kept it professional and been like, oh, you want to talk to me crazy? Bet, let's keep it professional. But she doesn't, of course. She just, you know, blows him off for the moment but comes right back. At the very least, I am glad that Louise seemed kind of aware of the weird vibes from Adele, because very often we've seen in these kinds of shows where our protagonist will be so clueless and so unaware of what's going on, and it's just frustrating to see. It's just not realistic. Like, that's why we often yell at the TV screen, because it's like we wouldn't do that if we were in this position. But you know, Louise had some sense, but she got tied in, she got wrapped up in all the mess so fast, before she could even figure out something was going wrong, it was a wrap for her. But let's keep going. One thing that was very strange to me is the fact that Adele would constantly text Louise from her phone and had no problem doing so, despite the fact that David was always monitoring her. Because my thing is, if you're really trying to check up on this person, why wouldn't you check their phone? Just because, oh, she doesn't know anybody? You can never be too sure, as we ended up seeing in the show, you know? I thought that was kind of, I don't know if that's like a plot hole. I just think, at least if she were like, we were seeing her delete messages or something to like make it, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I just didn't feel like that made much sense, but it's okay. Now, here's where my spidey senses were really tingling. Every time David entered or left Louise's apartment, the shot was always taken from above. Every single, the first time it happened, I noticed it because it was really weird. It's like, who's up there? And it would be like this weird like orb or something, like this weird tint or color or something. And I was just like, what is this? And why are we at this angle? It's very, very strange. So that was up on my mind. And The big plot twist, I had a feeling about it, but I didn't know how to make that connection, but it makes sense to me now. One other thing that I should have mentioned is the way that Adele was able to connect with Louise. Louise suffered from a variety of like sleep-related health issues, including sleepwalking and having night terrors, and it was kind of hard to watch, like just imagining myself in her position. So that was one way that Adele was able to connect with her, and she would confide in her because she's like, I understand where you're coming from. Shorty wasn't getting no sleep. Like she literally almost fell off her balcony because she was sleepwalking. So I mean, it's a pretty big deal. So I think it's around this time that Adele passes on a notebook, a little journal to Louise. It is a journal from a friend of hers from her stay at the mental institution. This dude named Rob, who was addicted to heroin. We don't know what's happened to him at this point. We have no idea what's happened to him. All we know is that Adele, that was her best buddy, and now she has this journal, and she's passed it on to Louise to hopefully help her with her sleep health issues. So by episode 4, we see like a really weird power dynamic manipulation game between Adele and the doctor. It is very strange, and it's at that point where I'm like, hold up, David's not truly the one in charge here. Like I can never tell, from this point on, I can't really tell who is in power between the two. Just because David has the job and keeps Adele at home, the way he was breaking down and crying, I'm like, hold up, do he need a psychiatrist? Like what are we doing here? It is around this time that we discover that Adele has some kind of ability to see what the doctor is doing and saying in real time, even if she's not there. Shorty could be at home laying down, eating an apple, and if David's at work talking to somebody, Louise maybe, raises eyebrows, she can see it happening. So it's funny because there was a scene where when Adele was trying to encourage Louise about her dream issues, her sleep issues, Adele tells her, you can go wherever you want in your dreams, and I'm like, damn, she was real serious about that because she's out hearing other people's conversations. Like, okay, Adele. So by the end of episode 4, we learn about the fate of Rob. We unfortunately see him at the bottom of a well. This well is on this Adele well. This rhymes. The well is on Adele's estate where she lives with her family. 10 minutes before this scene in this episode, we see Rob look over into the well, and like the shot is taken from inside the well, so we just see his face. And for some reason in my head, I was like, he's gonna be laying in the bottom of that well. I just knew it. Life was rough for him as it is, and it just felt bad to see him lay in the bottom of that well and reach such a tragic end to his life. Wink wink. So anyway, Adele puts Louise onto a new level of dreaming. It's a deeper level of dreaming, I guess you could say, and Adele seems to have a high ability to do this because in episode 5, when Louise does this for the first time in the comfort of her own home, we learn that Adele actually has been watching her. It's crazy. It's starting to get wild around here. So I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm starting to get nervous. Mind you, there's only freaking 6 episodes in the whole series, so like at this point, the climax is here. So by episodes 5 and 6, I'm thinking about Rob and I'm thinking about that well, and I'm like, did Rob push himself down or did Adele do it? So Louise gets confirmation that these people are off. She goes to Brighton, which seems like it's very far from where she's from. It speaks to a woman who owns a bakery named Marianne. It seems that Marianne had an interaction with both David and Adele at some point. David was like, I really like your baked goods, baby girl, and I like you. And she was like, okay, David, thank you. And Adele was like, yeah, we not doing that. I will kill you. So Marianne gives some information to Louise and is like, girl, protect yourself. You do not want to be around these kinds of people. And Louise takes that, but at this point, she's in too deep. She don't even know. She doesn't even know how deep she's in. So we get the big reveal by the end of the series. The main plot twist comes in form of a flashback, so let's get into it. Adele and Rob, her bestie at the mental institution, they were released on the same day. They would often practice astral projection together, and they would let their souls travel outside their bodies just small distances before regaining consciousness. Now this is where things went wrong. Remember where Rob came from. I call it the projects. I think they call them estates. If he comes from the hood, he talked about how he had no parents. He lived with his sister who hated him for the most part. There was nothing waiting for him. He only found joy when he was with Adele, and now that's all over because they're leaving the institution. So as promised, he goes to visit her at her home, which honestly is still semi-destroyed from the fires. So like half the house is exposed, but still a mansion. While he's visiting Adele, he meets David officially. The only person in his life is up in somebody else's arms, feeling up on this man who's gonna take her away and they're gonna live happily ever after together. And then it's like, as Rob, what about me? What do I have to go back to? So one night, Rob and Adele are posted up doing some astral projection again, and they decide to briefly swap souls. Yup. Do y'all see where I'm going with this? They decide to swap souls just to see what it's like. So right now, Rob's essence, his soul, his mind, everything is in Adele's body, and vice versa. Adele's spirit, energy, all that is in Rob's body. Adele does not like this. She's not here for it. She feels uncomfortable. She's like, baby, can you switch back? Like, I don't like this. But no, this was Rob's plan all along, you guys. He is now in Adele's body. So we see Adele, but the inside, the thoughts, that's all Rob. Who we know as Adele is no longer, if you catch my drift. He's now able to make sure that he can live well because he suffered for most of his life. While in Adele's body, he apologizes and injects his old body, which again still has Adele's soul in it, with a lethal dose of heroin and throws her down the well. So while we continue to see Adele in the physical form, it is no longer her soul inside. It's Rob who is behind her eyes. I know that was corny, but like I was like, oh, I get it now. So Rob is seeing Louise as a major threat to his livelihood and marriage, and she needs to be eliminated. Rob makes the decision to discard Louise in a very similar way to what he did back on that estate. He swaps souls with Louise, so now Louise's soul is in Adele's body, and Rob is now occupying Louise's body. And it's perfect. Why? Because at this point, David is pretty much not in love with Adele anymore because Adele is not truly Adele, it's Rob. And he's pretty much head over heels for Louise, so this is perfect because now Rob can continue to live on with his man, I guess, if that makes any sense. Louise, as we know her, is gone. Her body is now occupied by Rob's soul, and Rob is out here body jumping. That's like a hobby. It's like be a chef, body jump. That's pretty much the tea. Whew, that was a lot. That was a lot. Pretty much with the ending, I mean, Louise and David get married. However, Louise's son notices the difference because if it was one thing, Louise loved her son and she would fight to the death for him. Now she kind of looks at him like he's like an annoying snail. You know, the Adam, her son, is the biggest victim in all of this. Like his life will forever be changed by this. It really reminded me of the movie Us. Lupita Nyong'o's character, again in a car scene, is driving off at the end, speaking to her son, and her son senses that something's off, but the damage is done. When I think about what I watched, now knowing the plot twist, a lot of things make sense. There's a scene where we watch Adele or Rob go searching for a dealer, and it's the same area where Rob lives. How would Adele know where to find drugs? And also, they never said that Adele had a drug issue. It was just that, you know, she experienced trauma, and we know Rob to be the one who had a heroin addiction. So it's little details like that. It makes me think if Rob played a role in getting them to move to this specific area in the first place, you know? I do genuinely feel bad that Rob lived the life that he did, but I also hate him for destroying everybody else's lives, and I really wish Louise didn't have to be part of it at all. And it sucks because we actually never really get to know the true Adele aside from what we saw in the flashbacks at the hospital. There's so much more I want to know. I want to see how this is tied up. For us, it's a limited series, but I want another season so badly, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to live with what happens in the last episode. So I'm very curious to know what you all thought about this show. I did feel like David was still suspect in some respects. I feel like they could have gone a little bit farther with that. There were a few things that were weird. By the end of the series, David is just pretty much absolved of everything, and it's like he was right all along. Now we have to try to like rush to help him, and it's just like okay. Overall, I did like the series. I love seeing a black woman main character, even though her ending was not great. Still love to see her there. That was awesome. If you listened this long, I appreciate you sticking with me. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.